The first bunch of flowers appeared on a Tuesday. I almost didn't notice them. I was running late that morning, coat half on, keys in my mouth, coffee going cold on the counter, and I nearly stepped on them when I opened the front door. They were sitting on the top step. A small bunch of wildflowers, the kind that grow along roadsides and in untended yards. Purple and yellow. Tied with a piece of string. I looked up and down the street. Nobody was there. I picked them up. I looked at them for a moment. Then, because I was late and couldn't make sense of it, I brought them inside and put them in a glass of water and went to work. I figured it was a one-time thing. A neighbor being kind. A wrong porch. The following Tuesday, there was another bunch. Same step. Same string. Different wildflowers this time, white and pale orange, still slightly damp with morning dew, which meant they had been placed there early. Again, no one was visible. The week after that, another bunch. By the fourth Tuesday, I was no longer running late when I opened the door. I was standing just inside it, watching through the narrow window beside the frame, trying to see who was there. I saw the back of a small figure moving quickly up the street, a child, maybe 9 or 10 years old, in a gray jacket, already too far away to call out to. I picked up the flowers and stood on my porch and looked up the empty street for a long time. My name is Ellen. I am 58 years old and I have lived in the same house in a quiet neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, for 22 years. My husband, Frank, lived here with me for 16 of those years. He died of a heart attack 3 years ago, on a Sunday morning in April, in the kitchen where we had made breakfast together almost every weekend of our marriage. I was home when it happened. That is a fact I carry with me the way you carry something you can't put down, not constantly at the surface, but never fully absent. Grief, I had learned in 3 years, doesn't finish. It changes shape. It moves from the sharp, constant pain of the early months into something softer and more complicated. It becomes part of the texture of ordinary life, the empty side of the bed, the one mug on the drying rack, the moment every evening around 5 when I still sometimes turned to say something to someone who wasn't there. I had not become a sad person. I want to say that clearly. I had good friends, a job I found meaningful, I worked as a librarian at the local branch, and a life that was, by any reasonable measure, well lived. But the house was quiet. And some days, the quiet was more than others. The flowers had started 4 weeks after the anniversary of Frank's death, though I didn't connect those things at first. What I noticed was that they made a difference. Every Tuesday, I found them. Every week, I put them in water. And every time, they sat on my kitchen windowsill and made the room look a little less empty. I wanted to know who was giving them to me. I asked my neighbor Gloria first. She lived 2 houses down and knew more about this street than most people knew about their own families. She was 71, sharp, and had lived here longer than I had. I described the child, gray jacket, small, quick on their feet, moving up the street just before 7 in the morning. Gloria thought about it. "There's a boy on Clement," she said. "About 3 blocks up. 9 years old or so. I see him sometimes on his bike. Dark hair. Do you know his name?" "Danny, I think. His grandmother lives with them. Nice family from what I can tell." I didn't want to alarm anyone. A woman in her 50s asking about a child she didn't know required some care in its execution. So I waited. The following Tuesday, I set my alarm for 6:30 and stood by my front window with a cup of tea. At 6:52, I saw him. He came up the street on foot. He was small, clearly a child, maybe 8 or 9. He carried something in one hand. He walked with purpose, not hesitating, as if he had done this many times. He turned up my front path, bent down, and placed the flowers on the top step. He straightened up. For one moment he looked at the door, not expectantly, not waiting for anything. Just looking. Then he turned and walked back up the street in the direction he had come. He had a quiet face. That was what I noticed most. Not sad exactly, but carrying something. I opened the door. "Excuse me," I called. He stopped. Turned slowly. He looked at me without alarm, more like someone who had been preparing for this moment. "Are these from you?" I asked, holding up the flowers. He nodded once. "Would you like to come in for a minute?" I said. "I have orange juice." His name was Danny. He was 9 years old. He sat at my kitchen table with both hands around a glass of orange juice, and he looked at the flowers on the windowsill with a look I couldn't quite read. I sat across from him. I didn't push. I had learned, working with children at the library, that pushing made them close. Waiting made them open. "They're beautiful flowers," I said. "You've been leaving them for 5 weeks now." He nodded. "Can you tell me why?" He looked at the glass. He turned it slightly in his hands. "My grandma told me about you," he said. "About Mr. Frank." I was still for a moment. "Your grandmother knew Frank?" "She said they used to talk. When she walked in the mornings." He paused. "She said he was always outside. That he used to grow flowers in the front. She said after he died the yard got quiet and she was sad about it." I looked at him. "Your grandmother told you all this?" "Yes." He looked up at me then. "She said she thought about bringing flowers herself, but her back is bad. She can't walk far now." He paused again. "So I went instead." I sat with that for a moment. A 9-year-old boy, getting up before 7 every Tuesday morning, walking 6 blocks to leave flowers on the porch of a woman he didn't know, because his grandmother thought it was the kind thing to do and couldn't do it herself. I didn't know what to say. "What's your grandmother's name?" I asked finally. "Rose," he said. I knew Rose by face. Once Danny said her name and described her, a small woman with silver hair, who moved slowly and always wore a blue coat in winter. I remembered her. She had lived on Clement Street for years. We had nodded to each other in passing. Frank had mentioned her once or twice. He talked to everyone on his morning walks, which was one of the things I had loved most about him. Danny visited my kitchen 3 more times before I met Rose. He would arrive on Tuesdays with the flowers, knock, and come in when I answered. We talked, in that slow, careful way of people getting used to each other's company. He told me about school. He liked science, found reading hard, had 2 best friends and 1 enemy, which is the full scope of social complexity at 9. I told him about the library. He seemed interested in a general way, the way children are interested when adults make their work sound actually engaging. He never brought up Frank directly after that first conversation. But he always looked at the photograph on my bookshelf, Frank and me on our anniversary trip to the Oregon coast, both of us laughing at something just out of frame. One afternoon he said, "He looks kind." "He was," I said. "My dad looks kind too," Danny said. And then he went quiet in a way that told me something without telling me anything specific. I didn't ask about his father. I waited. He didn't bring it up again that visit. But something in my chest understood that there was a shape to this, to why a 9-year-old was walking 6 blocks before 7 in the morning and making a quiet, consistent effort to bring something good to a stranger. I met Rose on a Thursday afternoon in November. Danny had told her I wanted to meet her, and she had told him to bring me up on a day she was feeling well. He came by the library where I worked, his school was 2 blocks away, and told me his grandmother said Thursday was good. I went after my shift. Danny met me on the porch and let me in. The house was warm and smelled of something being slow-cooked. Rose was in a chair near the window, small, as Danny had described, with silver hair and hands that were folded in her lap and eyes that were sharp and direct and immediately familiar, in the way that certain kinds of people are familiar before you know them. "Ellen," she said. Not a question. She had been expecting me. Rose, I said. It's good to finally talk properly. She gestured at the chair across from her. Sit. Danny, go do your homework. Danny disappeared down the hallway. We both listened to his footsteps recede. Then Rose looked at me. Frank was a good man, she said simply. He used to stop and talk to me when I walked past. Not about anything important. Just the kind of conversation that makes a walk feel like it was worth taking. I felt the familiar ache. Yes, I said. That was him. After he died, I missed that, she said. And I worried about you. A person living alone in a quiet house, after years of company. She paused. I'm not as mobile as I was. But Danny is. She said it simply. Like it was an obvious solution. Like sending her 9-year-old grandson out at dawn to leave flowers for a grieving woman was just the practical next step when you want to help someone and can't get there yourself. I visited Rose on Thursdays after that. It became a habit in the slow, comfortable way that habits form when they suit both people involved. I would come after my library shift. Rose would have tea ready. Danny would do homework in the next room or join us depending on his mood and the day. We talked about everything. About Frank. About her late husband, Gerald, who had died 12 years ago. About what it felt like to live with the furniture of a life that had been partly cleared. About Danny, who was her daughter's son, her daughter, Patricia, who worked 2 jobs and was rarely home before 8 in the evening. She worked so hard, Rose said about Patricia one afternoon. Not with complaint. With the particular admiration that parents have for their children's efforts, even when those efforts are born from difficulty. Danny's father? I asked carefully. Rose was quiet for a moment. He died 2 years ago, she said. Heart attack. He was 37. I looked at her. Danny was 7, she said. He doesn't talk about it much. But he feels it. You can see it in him when he goes quiet. I thought about that quiet face. The way he looked at Frank's photograph. The way he had said he looks kind, as if kindness was something he was looking for in photographs because he missed it in the room. He's been walking to my house every Tuesday, I said, since the week after the anniversary of Frank's death. Rose looked at me. I know, she said. The anniversary of his father was the week before. We sat with that for a moment. 2 people grieving. One of them 9 years old. Walking 6 blocks before dawn to leave flowers for someone else who understood. I thought about what Rose had told me for a long time. Danny had been 7 when his father died. He had grown up, in the 2 years since, as the man-adjacent presence in a house of women, his mother working long hours, his grandmother aging, the weight of that loss sitting quiet and unaddressed because there was no obvious place to put it. He had not been brought to my house to process his own grief. He had been sent to do something kind for someone else. Rose's instinct, practical, warm, completely unsentimental, had been that the best thing for a sad child was to give him a purposeful act. And she had been right. I began to understand the flowers differently. They weren't just for me. They were also for Danny. Every Tuesday morning, he had a mission. He had a reason to get up early and walk with purpose through the quiet streets. He had someone who was expecting something from him, not much, just flowers, just the act of showing up, and that expectation had structure, and structure had helped hold him together. I asked him one Tuesday, when we were sitting at my table and he was eating the crackers I kept for him now, "Do you like coming here?" He thought about it. "Yes," he said. "Why?" He thought again. "Longer." "Because you're sad sometimes," he said. "But you're still okay. You still have the library and the tea and the flowers. You're okay even though you miss him." He said it plainly. Not to comfort me. As an observation. "Does that help you?" I asked. "Seeing that?" He looked at the crackers. Yeah, he said quietly. Kind of. I talked to Patricia, Danny's mother, at Rose's house one Saturday when she had a rare morning off. She was 34. Tired in a deep, structural way. Dark circles that suggested they had been there long enough to become permanent features. But she had Danny's eyes, the same quiet, carrying quality. She thanked me for being kind to him. I told her it was the other way around. I told her what Danny had said, about seeing that a person could be sad and still okay. She sat with that for a moment and then pressed her lips together in that specific way people do when they are not going to cry but are deciding not to. He doesn't talk about his dad, she said. He will sometimes in small pieces. But not directly. He doesn't have to talk directly, I said. He's doing it in other ways. She looked at me. He's working it out, I said. By doing something. By showing up for someone. By watching what recovery looks like from the outside and letting it teach him. Patricia looked at her son through the doorway. He was helping Rose with something in the kitchen, handing her things from a lower shelf she couldn't reach. He's a good boy, she said. He's more than that, I said. He's the most intentional 9-year-old I've ever met. She smiled. Not a happy smile, not a sad one. The kind that contains both things at once and has made room for them both. We sat at Rose's table for another hour and talked about ordinary things. It felt like the beginning of something that didn't need to be named to be real. Danny is 11 now. He still comes by on Tuesdays, though the flowers are less frequent, partly because winter limits what grows along the roadsides, partly because we've moved past the phase where the gesture needed to be anonymous and weekly to carry its weight. Now sometimes he just knocks and comes in. He does homework at my kitchen table while I read. He asks questions about things, about the library, about Oregon history, about what certain words mean, and I answer them properly, the way I would want someone to answer a child who is genuinely asking. Rose is slower than she was. She stays in her chair more. I visit on Thursdays still, though now I often bring something, bread, or soup, or whatever seemed right that day. Patricia and I have a quiet, warm acquaintance. We don't see each other often. But when we do, it is easy. The kind of ease that comes from having been honest with each other early. Last spring, I replanted the front garden. It had been empty since Frank died. The beds had gone to weeds and I had let them because the energy it required to address them felt like more than I had for a long time. But last April, I bought seeds. Wildflower seeds, the kind that grow in colors of purple and yellow and pale orange. The kind that grow along roadsides and in untended yards and can be tied in small bunches with a piece of string. Danny helped me plant them. He knelt in the dirt with his hands and worked with the focused care of someone who understands that some things need patience. When we finished, we sat on the front steps and looked at the bare beds. They won't come up for a while, I said. I know, he said. That's okay. We sat there in the quiet spring air, an 11-year-old boy and a 58-year-old woman, on a porch that had once received flowers left in secret, watching a garden that would bloom when it was ready. Frank would have loved Danny. That was what I thought, sitting there. He would have stood right here and talked to him about everything and nothing, and Danny would have listened, and it would have been one of those conversations that makes a walk feel like it was worth taking. Some things end. And some things, if you watch closely, just find a new shape. The garden came up in June. Purple and yellow and pale orange. I picked the first bunch and put them on the kitchen windowsill. Then I called Danny and told him they were ready.